Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that every human being alive today is only here because thousands of impossible events somehow went exactly right. One crocodile misses its attack. One child survives a harsh winter. One hunting group finds food before starvation sets in. One ancestor manages to escape a predator that should have killed them. Change just one of those moments, and you might never have existed. That's how fragile the story of humanity really is. When most people think about human history, they imagine mighty civilizations, towering cities, kings, empires, technology, and space exploration. But for more than 99% of our existence, none of that existed. There were no countries, no governments, no houses, no medicine, no written language, and no safety. For millions of years, our ancestors lived in a world where death waited around every corner. A trip to the river could end your life. A hunting expedition could become your funeral. A sudden drought could wipe out entire communities. And, perhaps, the most shocking part is that humans weren't the hunters. We were the hunted. Long before skyscrapers touched the clouds and rockets left Earth's atmosphere, our ancestors were small, vulnerable creatures struggling to survive among some of the most dangerous predators ever to walk the planet. If you were transported back 3 million years, you probably would not survive a single week. The world was unforgiving. Every day was a battle. Every meal was uncertain. Every mistake could be your last. Yet somehow, those fragile creatures became the species that would eventually dominate the Earth. They built civilizations, created art, explored space, and may one day leave Earth behind forever. That transformation did not happen overnight. It took millions of years filled with extinction, disaster, survival, and astonishing breakthroughs. Our story begins in Africa, not with kings, not with warriors, not even with humans. It begins with a small creature that looked nothing like the people watching this video today. She stood barely over 3 feet tall. She had no claws, no fangs, and almost no way to defend herself. By every measure, she should never have survived. Imagine living in a world where danger came not only from the ground, but also from the sky. Every movement carried risk. Every decision mattered. Every day could be your last. Yet, despite all those challenges, something extraordinary was beginning to happen. A change so small that nobody could have predicted where it would lead. A change that would eventually reshape the entire planet. While other animals relied on strength and predators depended on teeth and claws, Lucy and her relatives were developing something far more powerful: the ability to adapt. That single advantage would change everything. Before humanity could become the dominant species on Earth, it first had to survive one of the most dangerous periods in its entire existence. And what happened next would bring our ancestors closer to extinction than most people could ever imagine. The odds were stacked against Lucy and her kind from the very beginning. Every day was a fight for survival. Food was scarce. Predators were everywhere, and even a minor injury could become a death sentence. For countless generations, life followed the same brutal pattern: survive, reproduce, and hope the next generation would be just a little luckier. But while nothing seemed to change on the surface, evolution was quietly reshaping the future. Small improvements began to appear. Bodies became better adapted to life on the ground. Hands grew more capable of gripping and manipulating objects. Most importantly, brains slowly started to grow. The changes were almost invisible at first. No single generation noticed a dramatic difference. No sudden transformation took place. Yet over hundreds of thousands of years, those tiny advantages began to add up. Then, a new ancestor appeared. Scientists call this species Homo habilis, Compared with earlier human relatives, Homo habilis possessed a larger brain and a greater ability to solve problems. They were still vulnerable. They were still surrounded by predators. They still lacked claws, fangs, and natural defenses, yet they possessed something that would prove far more powerful than physical strength. They were curious. Instead of simply reacting to their environment, they began interacting with it in new ways. They picked up stones. They examined bones. They experimented with objects around them. Eventually, a remarkable discovery emerged. Certain rocks could be broken into sharp edges. Today that may sound insignificant. At the time, it changed everything for the first time. Our ancestors were creating tools rather than merely using what nature provided. Those early tools were simple. A sharp stone could cut meat, scrape animal hides, or break apart bones. By modern standards, they were primitive. By prehistoric standards, they were revolutionary. Suddenly, resources that had once been out of reach became available. Deep inside abandoned bones was nutrient-rich marrow, one of the most valuable food sources in the ancient world. Most animals could not access it. Homo habilis could. Where others saw leftovers, our ancestors saw opportunity. Every successful discovery improved their chances of survival. Every new skill offered another advantage. Little by little, intelligence was becoming humanity's most important weapon. Researchers believe Homo habilis often survived by scavenging the remains left behind by larger predators. While powerful hunters consumed the best portions of a carcass, valuable nutrients still remained. Our ancestors learned how to take advantage of every opportunity. They learned where food could be found. They learned which locations were dangerous. They learned from experience. More importantly, they began passing those lessons to others. That may have been one of the most important developments in human history. Knowledge no longer disappeared when an individual died. Skills could be shared. Lessons could be remembered. Experience could be passed from one generation to the next. For the first time, humanity was building upon what came before. The foundations of culture were beginning to emerge. Yet larger brains came with a cost. Thinking required energy, lots of energy. As intelligence increased, the demand for food increased as well. Survival became even more dependent on innovation and adaptation. Our ancestors needed better solutions. They needed better tools. They needed a new advantage, and evolution was about to provide one. The next species would master a force that changed human history forever, a discovery so powerful that it would reshape the future of our entire species. That discovery was fire. And what happened next transformed humanity forever. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors had survived by adapting to the world around them. They learned how to use tools, how to find food in places other animals ignored, and how to pass knowledge from one generation to the next. Yet, despite all those advances, they remained vulnerable to one powerful force: darkness. When the sun disappeared below the horizon, danger took control of the world. Predators became more active, temperatures dropped, and visibility vanished for early humans. Night was a time of uncertainty, a time when every sound in the distance could signal danger. Most animals adapted to the darkness. Our ancestors chose a different path. They learned how to control it around 2 million years ago. A new human ancestor appeared. Scientists call them Homo erectus. In many ways, Homo erectus was the first human species that looked surprisingly familiar. They were taller than earlier ancestors, stronger, more efficient walkers. Their brains were significantly larger, allowing them to solve increasingly complex problems. But their greatest achievement may have been the discovery that changed human history forever. Fire. Nobody knows exactly who controlled fire first. There was no audience, no celebration, no moment recorded in history. Yet it may have been the single most important breakthrough our species ever achieved. For the first time, humans possessed a force that had terrified animals for millions of years. Fire provided warmth during cold nights. It provided protection against predators. It extended the day long after the sun had disappeared. Suddenly, darkness no longer held the same power. The world had changed, and so had humanity. Fire offered another advantage that would prove even more important. It changed the way humans ate. Before fire, most food had to be consumed raw. Raw meat was difficult to chew, difficult to digest, and often dangerous. Cooking transformed everything. Meat became softer. Plants became easier to consume. More nutrients could be extracted from every meal. The result was extraordinary. With access to more energy, the human brain continued growing. Some scientists believe that without cooking, the modern human brain might never have evolved. A simple flame may have helped create everything that came later. Every city, every invention, and every civilization, all of it may trace back to a fire burning in the darkness millions of years ago. But the impact of fire extended far beyond food. For the first time, people could gather safely after sunset. Small groups sat around glowing flames while predators remained at a distance. Stories could be shared. Knowledge could be exchanged. Relationships could deepen. Many researchers believe these nighttime gatherings played an important role in shaping human communication and social behavior. Around those fires, humanity began becoming something more than a collection of survivors. It began becoming a community. While other animals were limited by instinct, humans were building culture. Generation after generation, knowledge accumulated, skills improved, tools became more advanced, strategies became more effective, and Homo erectus began achieving something no previous human species had ever accomplished. They left Africa. For millions of years, our ancestors had remained within a relatively small region of the world. Homo erectus changed that forever. They crossed vast landscapes. They entered unfamiliar environments. They adapted to climates they had never encountered before. Fossils discovered across Asia and parts of Europe reveal just how far they traveled. It was one of the greatest migrations in the history of life on Earth. Our ancestors were no longer confined to a single homeland. They were becoming explorers. Where other species remained tied to specific environments, humans learned how to survive almost anywhere. Deserts, grasslands, mountains, forests, each new challenge forced them to become more adaptable, more intelligent, more resilient. With every generation, humanity moved further from its fragile beginnings. The creatures that once hid from predators were slowly becoming masters of their environment. But even as Homo erectus spread across the planet, another chapter was waiting to unfold. A chapter involving a human species so powerful, so intelligent, and so mysterious that scientists are still debating their story. Today, they survived brutal ice ages. They hunted some of the largest animals on Earth. They cared for their families and buried their dead. And for thousands of years, they shared the world with our own species. Their name was Neanderthal, and their story is far stranger than most people realize. For hundreds of thousands of years, Homo erectus spread across vast regions of the world, adapting to new climates and overcoming challenges that would have destroyed many other species. Then another human species appeared. They were powerful, intelligent, and perfectly adapted to some of the harshest environments on Earth. Their name was Neanderthal for a long time. Neanderthals were misunderstood. Many people imagined them as primitive cavemen, incapable of complex thought. The reality was very different. Neanderthals were skilled hunters who survived brutal Ice Age conditions that few modern humans could endure. They crafted sophisticated tools, built shelters, and worked together in close communities. Evidence suggests they cared for injured members of their groups, even those who could no longer hunt or contribute. Some individuals survived severe injuries for years, something that would have been impossible without help from others, they also bury their dead. This simple act suggests something remarkable they may have understood: loss, grief, and perhaps even the idea of an afterlife. In many ways, Neanderthals were far more human than most people realize. For thousands of years, they shared the world with our own species. Then something unexpected happened. They disappeared. One of humanity's closest relatives vanished from history. Scientists still debate exactly why. Was it climate change, competition for resources, disease, or something else entirely? Nobody knows for certain. But the mystery becomes even stranger because Neanderthals never completely disappeared. A small part of them still exists today inside us. And what scientists discovered next completely changed our understanding of human history. For thousands of years, Neanderthals and modern humans shared the same world. They walked the same landscapes, hunted many of the same animals, and faced the same unforgiving climate. Yet at some point, the balance changed. Modern humans continued to spread across continents, while Neanderthal populations gradually declined. Scientists still debate exactly what happened. Some believe changing climates reduced available resources. Others suggest that larger social networks gave modern humans a crucial advantage. Disease, competition, and interbreeding may have all played a role as well. Whatever the cause, Neanderthals eventually disappeared from the fossil record, but they were never completely gone. Modern genetic studies reveal that many people alive today still carry traces of Neanderthal DNA, a reminder that humanity's story is not the story of a single species, but of many different human relatives whose paths crossed over thousands of years. With Neanderthals gone, Homo sapiens became the last surviving human species. From that moment forward, the pace of change accelerated. Humans spread into nearly every corner of the planet. They crossed deserts, climbed mountains, navigated rivers, and eventually reached continents separated by vast oceans. Their tools became more sophisticated. Their communication became more complex. Their understanding of the world continued to grow. Then came one of the greatest turning points in history: agriculture. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans had lived as hunters and gatherers. Now, for the first time, they began cultivating crops and raising animals. The change transformed everything. Permanent settlements appeared, villages became towns, towns became cities, and cities became the foundations of civilization. Writing emerged, trade expanded, kingdoms rose, empires followed generation after generation. Humanity built upon the knowledge of those who came before. What once took centuries now took decades. What once took decades now took years. Progress continued to accelerate. Eventually, humans learned to harness electricity, build machines, and unlock the secrets of science. They crossed oceans in days instead of months. They flew through the skies. They connected the world through invisible networks of information. And less than 70 years after taking their first steps into space, they began discussing how to settle other worlds. It is an extraordinary transformation. The descendants of creatures that once lived in constant fear of predators now send machines beyond the boundaries of the solar system. Yet, the story is far from over. Today, humanity stands at another turning point. Artificial intelligence is advancing at an unprecedented pace. Scientists are developing technologies capable of editing genes, extending human life, and treating diseases that once seemed impossible to cure. Some researchers believe future humans may merge technology directly with their bodies and minds. Others imagine permanent cities on Mars and eventually beyond. For the first time in history, evolution may no longer be driven entirely by nature. It may be guided by human choice, that possibility raises a question. Unlike any faced by our ancestors, what does it mean to be human? 3 million years ago, Lucy could never have imagined cities, computers, or spacecraft, just as we may struggle to imagine what humanity will become 1,000 years from now. But one thing is certain. The story that began with a small group of vulnerable ancestors in Africa is still being written, from prey to hunters, from survivors to explorers, from stone tools to artificial intelligence. Humanity has already achieved what once seemed impossible, and if history has taught us anything, it is that the next chapter will be even more remarkable than the last.